All right. There is usually a good flow of support to a president after taking an action like this. Other presidents of both parties have always experienced it. The question with this one is whether it applies to what is still a very busy domestic agenda. We've got GOP Pollster Lee Carter here, Conservative Review President Deneen Borelli, and last but not least, Wall Street Journal's Dan Henninger, a crackerjack writer, if I say so myself. Dan, begin with you. Do you think that the good follow-through that the president has been enjoying on this is a good follow-through on his domestic agenda?
Oh, I think so. I mean, what happened last night in Syria, there was a big plus for Trump. And, he's now beginning to get his wings. He's forward momentum. And I think this will carry through into the domestic agenda. After the Easter recess, they're going to take up taxes. Trump is obviously looking much more presidential now, both on the domestic and the foreign policy front. I think it's not just the domestic gain here, Neil, but that overseas, especially Xi Jinping sitting right there next to him while cruise missiles are firing, the Middle East understands there's been a reset. I think the Asians understand there's been a reset. The United States is back, and they're going to lead. Obviously so. And that's going to replace a lot of uncertainty with much more confidence than we've had.
Deneen, as you know, I'm the resident nerd here at Fox, so I follow market reaction. And the initial market reaction on the Tomahawk attack was the futures were going down, the Asian markets were tumbling. I can't prove the exact timeline, but I think it stabilized when foreign leaders began commending the move. Germany's Merkel, Theresa May in Britain, and that added a certain cachet to this renegade president who was kind of questioned and criticized, to put it mildly, in the foreign press, now getting rare praise. And I think that mitigated the sell-off and turned it around. I could be wrong, but I think it helped. What do you think?
Well, I think you're correct. And
that was the answer I was looking for. Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah.
I love being on your show.
There we go. Okay, go ahead.
No, but look at defense stocks. They've gone up since this has happened. And I think this sends a real clear message that we need to be energy secure here in our country, because anytime there's any tension or any inklings of tension in the Middle East, oil prices go up, and oil prices went up immediately this morning. I also saw that gold prices went up as well, because people are looking at where to put their money, in a so-called safe place. It went up, I think, like 1%.
Right.
So this is the first time it's been over $1,200 an ounce since the president was elected.
Interesting. Lee, it's interesting, and they both touched on it, but the president now with the Chinese president, and apparently he had to excuse himself from the dinner last night to say, oh, by the way, I've just launched a missile attack on Syria. Goes out, makes an announcement outside the Mar-a-Lago resort, then goes back in. I don't know what he said, like pass the potatoes or whatever, but how do you think that went down? And obviously the Chinese leader is a good poker face about these things. He's got to. But I'm sure it didn't go down well.
I'm sure it didn't go down well. I think from the very beginning, the fact that Donald Trump had him to Mar-a-Lago instead of the White House sort of put the president of China off kilter, because there's not as many protocols when you're there.
And the guy doesn't even golf, so there was no upside to that.
And then to be there and then have this happen, saying, we're not here to mess around. It was very, very clear message, I think, to China. And so I think that had to strain conversations some. But at the same time, I think Donald Trump said, look, we are here and we are strong. Another thing that I think that we haven't talked about that is going to be really interesting about how policy plays out going forward, I think the Russia conversation is going to be much less likely to have traction now that this has happened so quickly, because Donald Trump, Nikki Haley today in her speech said very clearly, Russia, we're condemning you as well. So why in this...
the bloom, if there ever was one, is off that road.
And so why would they be colluding with each other if this was the action that was going to be happening? So I think that whole argument is going to be able to take less and less, traction with folks, and we're going to be able to focus more on the issues that matter.
All right, Dan, one of the issues that matter is, look, we want to work, that is the president saying, with the Russians to try to deal with this nutcase in Syria. The president could just as easily been asking the Chinese to play a similar role with another nutcase in North Korea. Was that approach advanced by what happened last night?
I don't think so, Neil. I think we've had a reset of a reset with Russia as of last night. And Nikki Haley, Ambassador Haley's speech to the Security Council was really quite remarkable. I mean, she went so far as to say if the Russians had gotten in business with Assad, they had to have been fools to do that. So I think we have changed the dynamic over there completely.
Called them liars. You lied about saying that they didn't have chemical weapons.
Extraordinarily harsh
and you took advantage of this institution, the United Nations, that brokered this agreement, that avoided U.S. attacks because you said you would, and you lied. And that's
so I think we're going to see a shift here. This is going to give a lot of confidence to the Sunni Arab states like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan. And I think it's more likely because they're going to feel that the United States, after 8 years of withdrawing from the Middle East, is back and obviously leading. You're more likely to see a coalition led by the Sunni Arab states to fight ISIS now in Syria and in Iraq. So I think the shift will be towards our allies in the Middle East and away from Russia, and certainly to try to displace Iran.
You know, Deneen, you've reminded me that sometimes you've got to calculate what can't be calculated, that you've got to send a signal that makes people think you mean what you say, but more times that you can appear nutty, like Ronald Reagan with a defense shield got the Russians to the negotiating table because they thought he was a crazy cowboy here, right? Is it going to have that effect here if you're in North Korea and you're looking at what he did? You know, he could do this with me. This guy's crazy. He just might do it and advance that cause.
No, absolutely. I think this sends a clear message to the entire world that we now have a leader in place who is willing to act. And, you know, we're not in the Obama era where, you know, he was leading from behind. So it's a new dynamic. It's a new day.
Final thought.
And let's be honest here. I think that the fact that Chuck Schumer, that Pelosi, that we've seen McCain, we've seen Lindsey Graham come out and support this, this shows that this is going to be a new day, that there's going to be a lot of support moving forward and that we're willing to work together.
I've never underestimated the worminess of Washington, though. that can quickly change.
Fair enough.
All right, guys, thank you all very, very much.